Hello, my name's Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits Podcast, episode number 36. I'm a knitter from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I really love to knit. And I'm really glad that I get to talk about my knitting with you on the internet here. So thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram as @paper.knits, and I'm on Ravelry as This Is Paper Knits. Please feel free to like this video and subscribe and comment. I really appreciate it and helps more people see my videos, which helps me feel good. So I am wearing my Yesteryear cardigan today. This is a pattern by Andrew Mowry. I knitted mine in Sonder yarn Sunday morning 4-ply, and I really like it. My last episode that I uploaded was a new series that I'm doing where I fix old projects that need something changed about them. And so for this one, I needed to lengthen the sleeves, and I took a couple days and I lengthened the sleeves. They have needed to be lengthened since the moment I finished this sweater, and it took me 2 years to do it. But then I got it done, and it felt really satisfying. And now I've worn it a couple of times. Like, it's obviously like more fresh in my mind now, but I added like a couple inches more onto my sleeves, and it feels much more like how it was supposed to be now. So I don't have a lot of finished things to share with you today, even though I have done a lot of knitting, but that's because I finished my test knit for the Gudrun Johnston vest book that is coming out this fall. And I had mentioned in a past episode that I was like, oh, I didn't know if we could share about it or not. People have been sharing it on social media. I'm like, that's okay, but like, we're not supposed to share like final, like modeled pictures of it, I guess. And so I would have been wearing it right now and showing it all off to you, but that'll have to wait. But I did finish it, and I have an Instagram reel of like me cutting open my steeks. There was 3 steeks on that project, and then just like all the finishing and stuff that I did on it. And I'm really liking it. I was a little bit concerned just because I had made some modifications to the upper part of the pattern. Because it's a steeked project, the front panel is steeked, and so you knit the back panel flat, just in plain one color stockinette, and then the front panel is knit in the round, and then you steek it to get the 2 side seams and to get the armholes and to get the neckband. And so it was just like anybody's guess what it was going to look like basically once it was cut open. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I got all the finishing done on it and gave it a really good wash. I knit mine in Holskarn Super Soft Held Double. That yarn has, I think what it is that it has spinning oil in it from the manufacturing process. And so the yarn itself, when you're knitting with it or using it, is quite like dense and kind of sticky, and has a bit of an odor to it, like smells like smelling a little bit like oil mixed with like the sheep smell, you know. And then when you wash it, like the moment I dunked it in the water, first of all, the water was gray, but then also like you could just see the yarn just like fluff up and just like become its true self. Like, it was so lovely. And so I washed it in like quite hot water with wool wash, and very carefully, like by wash it, I mean I like dunk it into the water, right? Like, I'm not like scrubbing it in hot soapy water. Obviously that would felt it, but I do wash it in hot water. I block most of my knits in hot water unless I'm worried about the color running, which has happened before, but I just find that it softens up the yarn really nicely. So very carefully I give it a good block in some hot water, and then this one I rinsed it a couple of times. Actually, I think I washed it twice because yeah, the first time, like I said, water was instantly gray. I soaked it for a little bit, changed the water, added hot water again, some more wool wash, soaked it again, and then I think that time I left it until it had cooled. The water had cooled all the way, and then I rinsed it in like tepid water. And so there's no like severe temperature changes to the yarn when it's wet. That can also contribute to felting. But the fabric just like bloomed so nicely, and it's soft, and it's just like all the stitches have plumped up, and the color work looks really nice, and I love my colors that I chose. And I'm still feeling a little bit uncertain about my ability to pull off a sweater vest, but I wore it the other day and I just like really liked my outfit, and I like my fit changes that I made to it, and so it fits me really well, I think. And I did pin it a little bit when I blocked it, and I've done this before where I've done like a secret test knit, and then I'm like, oh, I'll talk about it when the pattern comes out. and I can like talk about it more fully and show it off. And then I just like never get around to doing that. Like I'm literally looking at a sweater that I had knit for a test knit for Goodge and Johnston previously that I just never shared on the podcast. Like I've probably worn it since, but like I didn't talk about the process. And that's one thing about test knits in general and like secret test knits that I don't like, because that's like I like talking about what I'm knitting. So in theory, I will share more about this when the book comes out in the fall. And if you follow Gudrun or Lina Magazine or Mari from Colorado Knitter or Alicia from Edmonston Creations, this past week they were all on Shetland taking photos for the book. And I can't wait to see the photos. Like it's just the art of like the knitted item is so like inspiring to me. And then the art of the photography and like just being in this beautiful location. And yeah, it just like, what an incredible project. So I am excited to see the book come out. And yeah, I think this fall, that's what I keep saying. I think it's this fall. Jana from Lina Magazine then immediately went back to like mainland Scotland to shoot photos for Rebecca of the Craybeas book, which her book is also coming out this fall, I believe. And so they were doing like pattern sample shoots and stuff as well. And so anyways, lots of good things, lots of good knitting coming up, good patterns. I'm excited. So very happy with how my vest turned out. I don't know what the final name of it is, so I just have been saying the test knit, but we will learn the name together when it comes out. So that's my major FO that I can't even show you. Actually, my other FO, which is a small FO, I also can't show you because my kid is wearing them, but I made some socks on my knitting machine. If you watched some of my Vlogmas episodes, you would have seen me struggling with my flatbed knitting machine to get it to work, and I made myself a pair of knee-high Christmas socks, and then I made myself a pair of normal socks on my knitting machine, but I was really struggling. Turns out I needed to give it a deep clean. And so one day last week, I was feeling motivated, and if you're feeling motivated to do an annoying task, then you just have to do it immediately. And so I took apart my knitting machine. I took out 360 needles out of my knitting machine, cleaned all of them, cleaned every little slot that every single needle went into, oiled everything, did a little bit of troubleshooting, and it's working amazingly now. I did film that. Will that ever turn into a video on YouTube? Who knows, but we'll see. The good news is the machine works beautifully now. I made a pair of socks for my kid fully on the knitting machine. I should have filmed that process, but I didn't. Partly because when I was actually making the socks, I was like in my pajamas with no bra on, and I'm not filming that. So, but here's a lovely picture of them. I had made socks with this yarn previously, hand knitted a pair of socks for my other son. And this was like the rest of the skein. It's a self-striping yarn from Turtle Pearl. And I was planning to make them for my younger son, but they turned out a bit big. And they're like a touch too small for my older son, but he wanted to wear them. And so I knit the first sock in like probably an hour and a half. And then the second sock probably took me an hour on the knitting machine. I was doing that this past weekend. And so by the end of the day then, he had a pair of socks. And he is not that keen to wear most things that I knit. And so the fact that he was wanting to wear them, I was like, yeah, man, I will make you all of the socks. Then my younger son was sad because he said, I thought they were for me. And I was like, let's go pick out other yarn to make socks for you. And so he chose this one, which is the leftovers from this other pair that I made for myself at Christmas time on my knitting machine. And so I will make him a pair of socks that match me. He liked that idea. And I do have a sock on the go for him that I'm hand knitting. I'm pretty much done this first one. I wanted him to try it on to make sure that it's long enough before I closed up the toe. I could probably add a little bit more length to it. So I might do that. I'll just rip out the toe and redo that. But I've been working on this all month. So, and when it's a vanilla sock, right? I did do a heel flap and gusset on this one. I can't do that on the knitting machine, but I can do a short row heel on the knitting machine. And so I'm like, man, now I have to hand knit this whole other one so he can have an actual pair of socks. But that's fine. It's nice to have a sock project on the go. We are starting swimming lessons again, which means I will need a simple project to knit on swimming lessons. So that'll probably be this other pink sock. But previously, with my knitting machine, when I owned this same machine a couple years ago, I had managed to knit a couple pairs of socks, including a short row heel and ribbing, all of it. Decreases for the toes. You can do the whole thing on the machine. But I'd also just like knit a couple of sock tubes. And so I'd had this skein of yarn that I had bought in 2022 at a yarn store that no longer exists. And this skein of yarn has been haunting me ever since. Bought it to make a pair of socks for my husband. And immediately I was like, this is ugly. I don't like this. And so I don't know if I would have tried this one on my like knitting machine version 1. I did try it on circular sock machine version. Didn't work. And then on the weekend, I want to say cranked a tube. I don't have a circular sock machine anymore. I'm not cranking a tube. I am going like this on my knitting machine to, I don't know. I need to come up with some terminology for that. Anyways, I made a tube and then I was going to hand knit the heels, toes, and cuffs. And then I was like, man, this is working so well. Like, I'm going to try and make an entire sock on the knitting machine. And so that's when I made the rainbow sock for my kids. And then I was like, I'm not hand knitting the rest of this sock for my husband if there's yarn I don't like. And so I ripped it out and I remade a sock. And so I only have one done. Here's this yarn. I have spent so many hours still, even though this was fast and this took me an evening, knitting this skein of yarn that I think is ugly, but here we go. I have a very tall sock for my husband. I figured out how to do a folded, like hung, what is that called? Folded cuff? A hung hem? I think that's what it is, a hung hem on the flatbed knitting machine. I looked up a tutorial, couldn't find one, and I was like, I've seen them for circular sock machines, so I was like, same concept, it's fine. It was fiddly, but like it worked super great. One of the things about this machine is that you can knit ribbing on it, but you can only knit ribbing flat. And so if you're knitting a sock, you knit the ribbing flat, and then you manipulate the stitches so that now you can knit in the round, and then you can knit the leg of the sock and the heel and the toe and the foot, all of that. But you can't actually do the ribbing in the round, and so then you have to, there's a seam up the side. And I have a pair of socks that have that. It doesn't bother me, but like visually it's not my favorite. And anyways, so I wanted to figure out if I could do this hum hem. Worked great. I did the entire process of this sock. So there's the short row heel, and then you can do the decreases. There's the decreases for the toe. Don't love how the striping turned out there. They look like 80s hockey socks to me. Some of the stripes aren't even long enough to like go all the way around the circumference. This is like a 60 stitch circumference. I just don't like it. It doesn't matter. I like asked my husband to try this on. I was like, hey, I made you one sock. Another one's coming. Also, I think the yarn is ugly, but like I need to get it out of my life. And so here's a sock. I kind of made the leg too long. Probably could have made the foot a bit longer. I'm still learning, but the fact that I did actually have one little dropped stitch on here. I've since gone back and fixed it. There's a bit of a, I can feel where I kind of had to weave in the yarn there. Hopefully that's not uncomfortable on his foot, but I didn't have any dropped stitches besides that one. I sometimes had previously ended up with a ladder along the edges of the sock where like the machine switches directions. I did notice that the tension is a little bit different on different parts of the machine, and so I am going to fiddle with that a little bit. That was a good thing to kind of see really visually on a sock. So I'm very proud of this, and also I wish that it looked nicer. Whatever. I will use up the entire skein of this. I have so many little bits and bobs of it because it has been re-knitted so many times, and I had to like, I did knit the whole tube previously and then had already cut it apart and then ripped that out. So then that was another cut in the yarn. And the stripes, this is what the stripe sequence looks like though. There's no rhyme or reason to it. So it doesn't matter if I add in the yarn at a different place. Like, anyways, they're woolly. They're superwash, but they like are woolly. And hopefully my husband wears them sometimes. So that's what I've been working on. I was feeling motivated to figure out the knitting machine. The cleaning part was messy and I was super done by the time I finally finished it, but it was just like so rewarding also to be like, oh, like I don't have to use my entire body weight to like slide this carriage across to actually knit the stitches. Like this is how it's supposed to look. That is what has been taking at my brain this past week. I feel like I am kind of afloat about what I'm knitting on right now. I did start a new project, which I will now show you, but also then we just like, yeah, we just like need to have a heart to heart about like, where am I going? What am I doing with my knitting? Not with my life. That's another conversation, but I am excited about this project. So I will show you now. I cast on for a Tesselated Pullover. This is a pattern by Andrew Mary. I had bought yarn for this at Christmas time and I just had deja vu, like I've talked about this before, but I don't think I have because what day did I start this on? Had I cast this on last time? Doesn't matter. I bought yarn for this at Christmas time. The main color for this is Durham Natura Ulisse. And then I had some miscellaneous spin cycle that I wanted to use. And then the fluff is Yarn Ink Surrey that I had bought from somebody destashing. And so I have more than enough of that. I will need to find another project to use because I think I have 4 skeins of that maybe. You might notice that this, if you're familiar with the tessellated patterns, you're like, what is that? What are you making? Is it the vest? Is it the cardigan? What's going on? No, I'm knitting the pullover, but I decided to knit it in pieces. And when I have told a few people this, they've gone, what? Why? So, you know, I don't know. I know why, but like, it's fine. Generally, it's not my preference to knit things in pieces and then seam them. However, the way that this pattern works is that it's bottom up, cast on in the round until knit round and round till you get to the underarms. You split for front and back, knit the fronts and back flat. And then I think this is a 3 needle bind off along the shoulders. What I've seen visually on like a lot of projects on Ravelry is that I can see where people switch from going knitting in the round to knitting flat. And I'm assuming because the gauge is different. Just like something is slightly different. This pattern is very like, what I found at least, I didn't know, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what the stitch pattern was just by looking at the pictures because I feel like it kind of like all blends together. It's slip stitch, mosaic, but it's very like checkerboardy. But I didn't know that just looking at the pattern. Because it creates this overall look of the fabric, I think that is maybe why sometimes in some circumstances it just highlights that like the gauge is a little bit different on the upper part because the visual of the whole fabric is just like ever so slightly different. I went back and like zoomed in on a lot of pictures. I think also depending on the people's yarn that they're choosing, if there's a change in color of the yarn right there, then that might also cause this kind of like line of demarcation right across the bust essentially, right? And I'm trying to avoid that. And so like from here you can see there's a change in my coloring kind of right here because I added in a new spin cycle color there. I think it flows nicely, but from afar you can kind of see that a little bit. But I wanted to avoid that, like that'll be down here. I wanted to avoid that like right across my chest. So that was my reasoning for why I'm knitting this flat in pieces. It also feels like if I was knitting this in the round, I would only be half as far as I am right now, right? Because I would have been having to do front and back. And so at this point, like I need to decide if how long I want it to be. That's one of the worries about doing a bottom up garment, but I'm already past the point in the pattern where it says to split for front and back and like start doing the shaping for the like upper part of the body. But it doesn't feel long enough to me yet. And so I need to make some decisions about that. In the pattern as written, when you split for the front and back, you cast on a few stitches on either side and then work flat. So like I will be able to continue on the pattern as written. I won't have to change anything. It's just this like body part that is going to be any different. So anyways, I am actually quite happy with how this has turned out. I had a swatch. I might have ripped it out. I think I ripped it out actually. I didn't wash my swatch. Pray for me. But I think it'll be fine. And oh yeah, I had all this like miscellaneous spin cycle that actually most of what I'm using right now is stuff that I had ripped out. I made a shift cowl quite a few years ago and didn't like it that much. The shape of it was kind of weird and I just wasn't reaching for it. And I was like, this yarn is too expensive for me to not be wearing it. And so I ripped out my shift cowl but ended up with all these little balls of yarn. And so I have quite a collection of little miscellaneous bits and bobs that I am trying to, I think I've sorted out which skein belongs to which colorway, and I'm trying to manage my colors. I had used, it might have been this one earlier on, but it was too high contrast and it was like quite a strong line. And so that's what would have been right here. And so there is still a line, but like it was much more severe. And so this one is now a darker blue that I'm using there. I'm trying to figure out how I can transition into this like blue purple without there being like a strong line. And then also this might end up being the back, because that also was like, could go either way. I tried to save some of this color so that I can use that again on the bottom. I got like a few inches into this before I realized that my front and back weren't going to match at all. And then I had to think, I'm like, okay, is that going to bother me? And it might, but I decided to proceed anyways. There was already that possibility for like the front and the back of like the upper body not matching and the sleeves not matching. And so like if there's a line, the side where I'm seaming where like the colors don't meet properly, because they probably won't. Okay, I don't think it'll bother me. So I do have some of that same kind of color vibe that I started with that I will do for the other body part. That sounded weird. I will do for the other half of the body. I will do for the front. Yeah. I had talked about knitting this pattern in my episode where I was going through all of my sweater quantities of yarn, because I think I had maybe talked about this Ulisse and was like, I don't know if I want to knit that pattern. It's like, I love the look of it. I want the finished item, but like, I don't know if I want to knit it. I don't really like doing mosaic. I've had a lot of stop and start trying to make a pressed flowers cardigan, and I'm sure I have a swatch for that somewhere too. And just like, don't love the fabric that it makes, don't love the experience of like, I find the slipping stitches just like slows me down, but this has actually been really enjoyable. And once I figured out kind of some yarn management things, like I wasn't getting all tangled. I figured out really quickly of like, oh, to try and figure out which row you're on, like I can just take 4 seconds and look at my knitting and figure out where I am at. And so this has been a good like pick up, put down project that I don't actually have to focus on that much. I think because you're changing colors so often, then that's helping me keep engaged, because it's like knitting stripes, right? Basically, you're only using one color at a time, but there's 3 separate colors that you end up working with over the course of the pattern repeat. And so I think that's just helping keep my brain engaged. And obviously the spin cycle colors are nice to see them shift and change. There's my spin cycle bag. I had 2 of this colorway, and so I think that's maybe the one that I'm working on right now, which is, this one might be Melancholia. Also have 3 full skeins that I bought when I was at, oh, why do they have cat hair on them? They've been in a bag. That I bought when I was at the Farmer's Daughter Fibers retreat in 2023, and really like these 3 colors together. I don't know what these are going to turn into. I don't want to dip into these skeins for this project. I want these to be something altogether. I think I had planned maybe a shift again with these. We'll see. I will say this and then I will immediately like lie. Probably this is the last of my spin cycle purchases. It is now available. I would have bought this from the Knitting Loft in Toronto over, well, I guess those ones I bought when I was in the States, but like these other ones all came from the Knitting Loft in Toronto because at the time that was the only store that I knew of that stocked spin cycle. Now there's a store in Calgary that stocks it at Stash Lounge. It is just so expensive. And so it was already a high-end yarn, and I don't know if just like because of the Canadian dollar, because of like all the stuff that's going on in the United States right now, like it's very expensive. They're like $50 for 50 grams. They might be $42 for 50 grams. Let me look that up. Okay, dyed in the wool is $46.75. Dream State is $50. Plump is $44.50. Like that's just a lot of money for a skein of yarn, and it's so beautiful. And I appreciate their ethics as a company, and that is part of what contributes to that price point. And I get that, and I respect that totally. But like, man, it's expensive. So this might be the end of my spin cycle. Purchasing at this time what I have might be the end of it, kind of thing. Obviously, the answer, instead of buying a $47 skein of yarn, is to spend $1,000 on an e-spinner and make your own yarn, and then buy the fiber for $30 a braid to then make the fiber to spin it yourself. Yeah. So obviously, in completely unrelated news, look at the beautiful bobbin of fiber that I spun. This is 100 grams that I just spun all as one single. It is Bramble Ridge Hanui fiber. Bramble Ridge is from Vancouver area, I believe. The Hanui fiber, I believe, comes from New Zealand. This one was called Mushroom Hunt. It says it's 23.6 microns, 100 grams. And my plan is to ply it together with what's on there right now. And so I can't remember what that colorway was called, but I bought these braids at the same time at Stash and decided in that moment, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna spin these and ply them together. And now I'm feeling like a little bit unsure about that. Like, I haven't done that before. In theory, I've been spinning for 5 years. I'm very much a beginner spinner. Have not done a lot of experimenting with different colors and stuff. I guess that braid I showed you last time, which I've now washed, I still haven't, I need to ball it up and decide what I'm going to knit with it. But like, this was 2 different fibers, obviously 2 different colorways that then I spun, like applied together. Although this one, I guess I blended it. Each single had both fibers in it. Yeah, I did. It was kind of like a fractal. But it's nice and chunky. It's just different than like what I have spun before and like how I've combined colors. That's part of what I want to learn about. I think it'll work. Like green and purple, I think it'll be fine. That's the, oh, there's my tag. This other colorway is called Rage Berry. So that's the other color. So yeah, so that's the other thing I've been working on. Okay, so let's talk about now my existential feelings about knitting. I always have a lot of projects on the go. I enjoy having a lot of projects on the go. I have a handful of long-term whips right now that I'm just not really enjoying working on. Like, they're fine, but it's not what I want to pick up. I'm not going to rip them out. Like the Tesselated shawl, it's beautiful. I want to have the finished project. It's just not super enjoyable to knit. I had done a little bit of work on my mild shirt jacket, like mod that I've been doing. I can't remember where this was at last time I showed you. Not very much different than where it is right now, but I have joined for front and back, and now I just have to like knit the body. I did order some I don't even have a needle on that side. I did order some 5-inch needles instead of my 4-inch needles, and I'm hoping that that will help it not hurt my hand so much. I'm knitting this at quite a dense gauge for how chunky this yarn is, and I think it's going to be worth it, but it hurts my hands. I can only do a couple of rows at a time. I'm hoping that the longer needles will just help with that a little bit. So I just ordered those yesterday. So I was going to say like, so I'll wait till I get here and then I'll be flying, but I'm not committing to anything. I was also noticing just like a little, I don't know if that's going to show up on here, but there was just like a little bit of rowing out, which I had a lot on my swatch. And so I've now switched to using a smaller needle for my wrong side rows. And so I had been using 4.5 for everything. Now I'm doing 4mm on the wrong side rows, which I stole for a different project, which is why it's there. I did buy an extra set of 4mm needles as well, just the 4-inch ones, because I forgot that I was going to buy the 5-inch ones. Oh man, this is looking ginormous right now and very square, but it will be better. My plan right now is to finish this ball of yarn once I get my longer needles, and then take a pause on the body and knit a sleeve, and then just see how this shoulder looks once I have added the sleeve, and see if that rounds things out a little bit more. Just as a reminder, because I don't know, this project frequently gets edited out in the editing phase. I am taking the vibe of the mild shirt jacket, but changed it to have saddle shoulders instead of the European shoulder construction. I then later learned that Ozetta also has a pattern that uses the saddle shoulder, which I think is the Lakes series. But I had already figured, like I had already done the calculations and stuff myself. And so I just, whatever, I kept going with my plan. But I want the vibe of the mild shirt jacket with like the curved hem and the big collar and more like the overshirt kind of look. So that is where this will become. My goal right now is to be able to wear this in the fall. And so that's plenty of time in theory for me to knit a sweater. But it has been, I started this in September. And that's like, I haven't got very far really, right? Part of that was slowing me down because I was doing the math myself and like doing a bit of trial and error, trying to make sure that the shaping was right. I was going to get the size that I wanted. Now I'm at the point where it's like, I just have to knit for like, I don't know how many inches, like a lot of inches. But because the yarn is hurting my hands and it's just been slow. I really want this project, but it's a longer term project. The Tesselated was very much like, I really want that. I had this vision of what I wanted the sweater to look like, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I was like, okay, I need to cast that on. And like probably Kate Kirsten, you have 2 sweaters on the go, you have a couple pairs of socks on the go, you have a shawl on the go. You don't need more things. I feel like something's missing that I've like that I want to be working on. And I just like haven't quite found it yet. Like I really like maybe the motivation that like a test knit brings, because there's like quite a strict deadline, like reading the pattern really closely, talking back and forth with the designer or sometimes with other people in the test knit kind of thing. Like I really like that about a test knit. And so maybe now that one is over and it felt like a big accomplishment of a project to finish, that test knit. And so then maybe I'm just like feeling a little bit aimless about like, what do I want to do now? I did start winding some more warp for my weaving project that I started like 6 months ago. But that's a slow process for me. That doesn't, you know, kind of like fill that dopamine seeking behavior, you know? I did swatch for, I just said this before, my knitting group is making the, I always have to double check what it's called. The Pop Rock Pullover by Tanis Lavely. She has another pattern called the Rocket Tee, and so that gets me confusing. I think I might have called this one the Pop It earlier today. To my friend. But then we're also knitting the Rocketeer Cowl by Maxim Cyr. And so it's like pop rock pullover, but not the rocket, but also the Rocketeer. And it's just like, my brain cannot keep them straight. And so I've been trying to decide what yarn I wanted to make for the pop rock pullover. It is fingering weight, 24 stitches and 32 rows. The original pattern was knit. One of the samples was knit with a fingering wool and striped with a mohair. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel like that doesn't feel summery enough to me. I had this Sanisgarn Lena Tin Lena. And so on local yarn store day, I went to one local yarn store and bought this green color, and I think that they will look beautiful together. However, I started swatching and I don't like the fabric that it's making. And so this is a very small swatch that has not been washed, but it's like 25 stitches. And so it's already too small, and the fabric is so gapey. And sorry, I'm just seeing something. What is that? Maybe that's little bits of linen that don't dye the seam in this yarn. I just like picked out something that looked like a twig. Anyways, so I either need to knit this at a much smaller gauge, or I'm gonna have a see-through top, and I don't want that. So I might try and swatch this holding it double just to see, because if I have to knit a different size because of my gauge, I think I would rather my gauge be too big than for my gauge to be too small, because then I can knit a smaller size rather than knitting a bigger size, right? I always have to think through that really carefully. Anyways, the fabric feels really nice in terms of like it's soft. It's too see-through. So I'm gonna re-swatch holding that double just to see. Almost ordered completely new yarn, also on local yarn store day. Decided to try this out first. Something else I bought though was some fiber from this, the yarn store is called Little Blue Fiber Studio here in Edmonton. And then they had this fiber, and they had some spun yarn as well from a local sheep farm called Brinslin Estate Fibers. So this is 70% Gotland Fin, 30% Rambouillet. And so I am going to, I don't know if I bought enough because I just like bought on vibes, but I would like to spin this for the Rocketeer cowl. And I don't even remember if I need 3 colors or 4. I kind of had this vague idea that maybe I could blend some of these together. I also have, a Shetland, which could maybe be one of the stripes if I need. Okay, it's 3 colors in DK weight. So that will be, I can spin DK weight. I can't spin anything finer than that currently. But I liked the idea about, well, Jolene from Jolene Knits a Lot and I were talking about spinning for it. And so she also bought fiber. I think she was there the day before me. There's also Corriedale fiber with lots of beautiful colors and stuff there at the store. And so I think she bought some of those, but yeah. So that'll be, once I finish spinning this up and plying it, I'm going to do this so that I know if it's going to work or not. Oh yeah, and then I bought the 16-inch circular needles to try my sleeves for my mouser jacket. And I bought their store bag. Isn't it cute? It was snowy and blizzardy and miserable here on Saturday, which is when I was going about, I was going to drive out to, there's a town called Stony Plain that's like 35 minutes or so from me, that I was going to go out to because there's a yarn store there. I don't go out to it very often. So I was like, oh, it's a perfect day to visit for like local yarn store day. But I didn't want to drive on the highway in that weather. I think I finally made it out of winter as of today, yesterday. It's supposed to be 22 degrees here tomorrow. Most of the snow has melted. We've already like had a full melt and then it snowed again. Like that's happened a couple of times, but like, yeah, there's been some funny Instagram reels and stuff of, look at our glorious weather here in the prairies. And it's like a blizzard. Like, so yeah, it's, I'm happy to still be wearing all of my knits, but, I just like tired of the snow. Oh man, the one day it was so, that was supposed to be on Friday last week. It was so windy. My weather app said 40 gusting to 60 or something kilometers per hour. I swear it was more than that. Like it was miserable. I'm like standing in this open field to like pick up my kids from school and the wind was just, I couldn't believe how aggressive it was. So like, thank God it wasn't minus 30 and that wind, like it was like -2, but it was so windy. So didn't love that. ready for some sun and some warmth and no more snow. Yeah. Okay, I think that is all of my knitting things, unless I think of something else, and then I'll tell you about that. A couple other random things. In the last couple of weeks, I think since my last episode, I don't think I found her before that. Anyways, I have been watching Mel Makes Stuff, and she's been on YouTube for years. She had taken a break and just started making episodes again. And so I think that's why she probably popped up on my YouTube feed, whatever. She's wonderful. I watched her, like, I think she has 2 or 3 maybe recent episodes, and like she hadn't made any in like a year or so. Let me just fact check myself there. Okay, in January. So she's been back since January. But she started in, her oldest video on here is 2020. I've just been watching all of her old episodes. She has a really good way of describing her process of like patterns that she chooses, yarn that she chooses, troubleshooting, modifying patterns to make them work for her, understanding, you know, how a pattern design is going to fit her, if she needs to make modifications in order to make that happen. She makes some like really complicated stuff, sometimes sews then to like make a full outfit, and like goes through kind of like that whole making process. And I've just been really enjoying watching all of her old episodes, and so go check her out. She lives in BC now, but just as of recently, but she was in Massachusetts, I think, before that. Massachusetts? I'm not sure. Anyways, go and check her out. I just am on episode 14 from 3 years ago. And she does kind of like, you know, typical, like, here's what I'm working on once, but then also does like special episodes where she highlights a certain project, or she had a series where she was going through different Japanese knitting patterns and like describing, if you get a book of Japanese knitting pattern from Japan, like, and it's written in Japanese, like, here's how you can still knit it, kind of thing. She does lots of color work and lots of steeking. I've been watching, she had a whole episode about learning how to use lever style knitting, or Irish cottage knitting, I think it's called. And so she was like, I'm gonna learn how to knit like this, and then like knit an entire shawl using this like completely different method of knitting. It's like cool. Anyways, I've been really enjoying watching her stuff. So go check out Melissa. Speaking of Massachusetts, Noah Kahan's new album came out, and man, I love it. I really like Noah Kahan, and I maybe have told this story before, but I don't care. I'm telling you again. I started listening to Noah Kahan because of Rebecca Clow of the Crayabea Knitting Podcast. Because she has her stick season sweater, and so she had designed this sweater. I had been an avid watcher of her podcast. I think had heard of Noah Kahan, but I'd never listened to his music. And then she had the stick season sweater, and I liked how everyone was like, oh, these are the sticks on the pattern, like the upper texture was like, that's the stick. So I made a stickless stick season and whatever, and that is why I went and listened to Noah Kahan. And I will be forever grateful to Rebecca Clow for designing that sweater inspired by him, because I love his music. And yeah, this like the stick season album obviously is amazing. Like going back and listening to a couple of his older albums, when the Great Divide single dropped, and it just was like, oh, just like cut me in my soul. And then like getting to listen to the whole album, I've had it on repeat all week, and I'm just enjoying it so much, and just like deciphering the lyrics. And it took like quite a few days before Spotify had the lyrics up, and so I had to like Google and like read them on the webpage with all the ads like as I was listening. But just like, yeah, it's like, oh man, like this one is really like speaking to my soul. Like what's he actually saying? And then like being able to read his lyrics, I'm like, oh my god, like that's so devastating. I love it. Like I'm really enjoying the album. And so if you are no Kahan fan, you have already been listening to the album, but if not, and you like to feel sad when you listen to music and feel like it's making you nostalgic for living in New England or living in a small town, yeah, I've been really enjoying that album. So go check that out. And while we're speaking of new releases, I loved this book. It's called Yesteryear. It's by Carol Claire Burke. I have been a long time listener of her podcast called Diabolical Lies. I first found her on TikTok, like right when she started TikTok. For some reason, she popped right up before she like hit it big. And I've been following her ever since. And yeah, as soon as the podcast dropped, I like started listening to it. Quickly became a paid subscriber of the podcast. If you are a feminist and a leftist, like, you should listen to Diabolical Lies. If you live in Alberta, like, they're American. They're talking about American culture and American politics and stuff a lot. But there's just a lot of things that overlap with the conservative movement in Canada and the current state of Alberta and how we got to be where we are. I highly recommend the podcast. They're long episodes. They swear. If either of those things bother you, don't watch them. If you're like a very committed capitalist, then maybe don't. But also maybe do. So anyways, I have been anticipating this book since Caro announced that she sold her book. And I didn't know, I was worried that I wasn't going to like it because I don't read a lot of fiction and really admire the other work that she does. And so I was just a little bit worried that, like, what if I don't like this book? And so I got it the day it came out. I pre-ordered it and read it in the next 24 hours. Okay, why I'm talking about this is because Caro came to Calgary on her book tour. And so she's been touring around the United States. She's in Europe right now on her book tour. She had one stop in Canada and it was in Calgary, which is 3 hours away from me. And so last week I drove to Calgary. I dropped off my kids at school. I drove to Calgary, went and hung out with Melissa from Knits and Resistance, which she has podcasts, and I have been watching her podcast for years. She's not doing much right now because she's super busy in normal life, but I had never met her in real life. So like, we've been Instagram friends, but I had never actually met her in person. And so I went and hung out with her at her house, which when I was telling people like, oh, I'm going to meet my friend for the first time ever, I'm going to her house, people were like, okay, be safe. But like, that's fine. I know her. She's an internet friend. So like, that was really good. And then there was a group of us who all went to this book event. Also people that I hadn't met before, but we had connected because of the Diabolical Lies podcast. And so some of them had met each other before, but I hadn't met them in person. And we all went out for supper. So there was 9 of us or 10 of us that went out for supper at this cool place in Calgary and before the book event. So we sit down at our table and I look kind of behind me and then I look back again and just like out the corner of my eye, I could see this like quarter profile of a face. And I was like, oh my God, that's Caro. Like that was Caro sitting behind us at our table. And so I was like, oh my God, you guys. Like, we immediately interrupted her meal and then fangirled over her. And she was with the organizers of the event. They're from an organization called WordFest. I hadn't heard of them before. They seem like a really cool group. And so if you're in Calgary or like Central Alberta area, like check them out. But they had organized, like they had coordinated for her to come up here to Calgary. So she was having a meal with them before the event. And just happened to be at the same restaurant as us. And so we got to take a picture with her and we had put together this little book, just like some notes and stuff to her, like how her work has impacted us basically. So we got to give that to her. It was so lovely. And like, she was so kind and generous with us. And we were like making a scene essentially in this restaurant. Like, we were being chill. We were being super cool. But like 10 of us were standing there taking a picture with her, right, in the restaurant. As like our server was trying to bring us food, she's like putting food down on the table. And so then we told her, I was like, oh, like we're all here for an event and like that's who we're coming to see. And like she was sitting right there and people were looking for sure. Like, this was not a big restaurant. So it felt so special though. I was so thrilled to see her and just like breathe the same air as her. I for sure have a parasocial relationship with her online and that's fine. I'm okay with that. Anyways, so we had a beautiful, lovely dinner and then went over to the Calgary Public Library and they had this like a hosted talk with her about the book. And that was really good to hear. And she's very eloquent and very smart. and knows how to put a sentence together. And like, that's why she's a writer, obviously. Yeah, it was just funny. Melissa and I were talking about like trying to sit in front of a camera and like talk and like put together coherent sentences. I do not understand how people can just sit down and press record and then like film and then just upload it. Like, I could never. I repeat myself multiple times. I edit out ums and ahs and me staring off into space. I fumble over my words, and like, that's fine. There's not like a way that is right or wrong to be. I know why that is for me, and it's fine. Like, it doesn't have to be, I don't have to be able to sit in front of a crowd of people and like speak eloquently. That's not my job. It is Carol Claire Burke's job right now because she's on a book tour, and she just did lovely with it. So anyways, we had this lovely, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour maybe of her asking, just like answering questions about herself and her writing process and about the book, and, you know, some really insightful questions from the audience. And then we got to stood in a long line and had her sign her books. And so I have a signed copy of my book now, which was really lovely. We took another picture with her. I loved it. It was so good. It meant so much to me. I didn't even talk about the book. Like I said, I don't read a lot. People who give good book reviews, I feel like that's a very good skill for people to have. I might be able to talk about a yarn that I know a lot about, but even then I'm gonna be like, it's fluffy, it's woolly, but not itchy. Like, I won't have that many eloquent things to say about it. I do not have profound, eloquent things to say about this book, except that, as I pause, that I will then cut out. Somebody said in a review, I think somewhere along the line, the book got described as like being about the performance of womanhood. And it's about a trad wife influencer. And so obviously she is performing for her audience, but you get so much of her inner dialogue that like she is performing for everybody. She's performing for herself. She's performing for God. She's performing for her husband. She's performing for her sister, for her mother, like for her kids, for her staff. Like, she's just constantly performing what she views womanhood, motherhood, wifehood is supposed to look like. And coming from the perspective from high control religion felt very, very familiar to me. Caro shared something about a really interesting Substack essay that was written about the book from the perspective of someone who's ex-Mormon. And Caro said that some people who haven't liked the book, you can like a book or not like a book, like whatever, it doesn't matter. But one of their criticisms about it was like that it was kind of heavy-handed in like the way, like, why is the character like that? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's so, it's hyperbolic. And it's like, no, if you understand why Natalie, the character, is the way she is, it's not hyperbolic. It rings really true. And be grateful that you don't understand. Like, that you cannot relate to her. Like, and it's tricky because the character is not likable. Like, does not do much to endear you to her. And also, like, I could just relate to her so much. And being really sheltered and like going to university and like not understanding people and not understanding how to interact with her peers. And she basically just like doubled down on the things that helped her feel safe, you know, to her detriment, really, but like that's part of how she coped with the world. That's a hard place to exist when you don't have support around you. And Natalie did not have support around her. So anyways, it's like, there's all these things that's like, if you haven't had that happen to you, it might feel like heavy-handed. If you have read this book and now you're hearing me say like, Kirsten, you relate to her? You might be like, are you okay? Well, that's questionable actually, but I feel like I can relate to a lot of what the place where Natalie is coming from. And also I have been able to like claw my way out of that existence. And she didn't claw her way out of that existence and did not have help to get out of that existence. She like doubled down in that existence. Anyways, I really enjoyed the book. I cried and cried and cried at the end. It hit me really hard on some very like visceral level of like the things that I'm in therapy for, basically. And yeah, the idea of like the performance of womanhood and feeling so sad for her and wanting so much more for her. And then, yeah, just kind of like rooting for this person who kind of a terrible person. It's funny. I was telling my husband about it. He's like, did you enjoy it? I was like, no, I really did. Like, it's hard to explain, but there's just a lot about it that hit really close to home for me. And I saw something online of somebody like, oh yeah, like I would love to snark about trad wives, like sign me up. And it's like, oh, it's so much more than that. Like, that's not what it is. It's not just like, let's make fun of influencers, or let's make fun of trad wives, or let's make fun of Christians, or like, that's so not what it is about. And I would be like, oh my God, you're missing the point of the novel. But it is like, there's just so much more to it than that. And hearing Caro talk about Natalie, her main character, of just like, oh, I love her. Like, I loved spending time with her as I was writing her. And this person who was like so different than herself, and trying to, get into that mindset of like, oh, like what would she do in this situation? And I feel like it was done really well. So anyways, that was my adventure last week. I was exhausted. I drove to Calgary, had my full day, had the event that night, stayed over in Calgary, drove back the next day, was home for like 45 minutes before I had to go pick up my kids from school. And then I went to knit night. I probably could have skipped out on knit night that night, but I had FOMO, so I went. But I was exhausted, but it was so good. And I just like, I'm so thrilled that I got to meet her. Like, I knew I was going to meet her at the book signing anyways, but like, to just, I don't know, see her in like a normal setting of like out for supper, and like, hopefully we didn't bother her too much. Anyways, so that was my big adventure, and yes, highly recommend. If you want to feel devastated by a book, sometimes you need one of those, and I feel like this is what that was for me. Okay, that's everything I have for you today. I don't even know what I'm going to have for you next time, because I won't be finished my Tesselated, and I'll probably have cast on 2 other projects. I did do another swatch for another project the other day. I need to measure now that I did actually block that swatch. So maybe I'll have that cast on. I don't know. That's what's up in my life right now. I am going to try and sit in the sun today for a little while and just soak up some sun and look through the 1,000 patterns I have saved on Ravelry, and then hopefully find the one singular pattern. It's like, aha, that's what I need to knit. That will solve all of my problems. Just kidding. I know that that's not real, but sometimes it feels that way when you're like really excited about a new project, and it's just like energizing. And so I need to find that. Okay. I love to hear what you're working on. And so let me know in the comments what you're working on right now. If you have read Yesteryear and want to discuss it with me, then send me a DM on Instagram. Don't spoil the book for people in the comment section. And that's everything for today. So happy knitting, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.